Hi everyone. Oh, it's Monday again. I said that I would talk about gendery things today. And I'll tell you why. As you probably know, yesterday we had the introductory Rewild Your Heart webinar. It went very well. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Collection of very interesting people, all with their own ways of looking at it, and yet all coming in from sort of the same point, or coming in towards the same point. Let's put it that way, because they're not coming from the same place, but they're all coming together from these points, and they're all heading to this central thing where rewilding your heart was really important. And they all had their own ideas and viewpoints to bring in. And I put up lots of sort of ideas and suggestions, so we kept the talk flowing. And I had a rough idea of where I was going to go. Well, I had a good idea where I was going to go. And we did. Not as I would have expected. Well, I gave up having expectations a long time ago because I find they're a complete waste of time and usually land you in the SH1T. So I went into it with full of expectancy for everything that was going to happen, but with no expectations. And that was one of the themes that we were talking about. Because people go along and it becomes a sort of marketing idea. You know, I've got to market my idea because we've all got to have, oh, I don't know, wind farms or something. You know, and so the whole of rewilding is going to be focused on wind farms, or the whole of rewilding is going to be focused on planting more trees. Neither of which are necessarily bad ideas, although I am pretty anti wind farms. There are lots of better ways to do wind power. But I wasn't trying to sell my idea. I was trying to sell my feeling, well, not sell it, but share it, give it, open it up to people as a starter for 10. And I think that worked. And everybody else shared their feelings and how they felt and the things that were in their way and the things that they loved and the things that they found worked. And that was so good. And we were all talking about rewilding our hearts. And rewilding our hearts is really about getting down there and dirty with nature and not being afraid of nature. Not being afraid of animals, not being afraid of plants, not being afraid of wind, not being afraid of storms, not being afraid of the sea, not being afraid of a whale or a shark or something. It's all about knowing that you are part of that oneness and that we're all part of each other. And everybody who came had that idea in their own way. They wouldn't express it the same way as I just did. And the other good thing was that was actually important to all of us, that we could express our feelings differently, but our feelings could draw us in to help us share, and not just share, but actually become one, become empathic with each other and feel each other. That was important. And one little exercise we had near the beginning was in what they call breakout rooms in Zoom. So, you know, people go off in 2s or 3s and you sort of said, let's look at this question. And so you give them the question and they take it off and then they chat about it together. And I'm not there. Now that's really helpful. That's a really good point about breakout rooms, is they can do it behind my back. And that's what we want them to do, because they will talk more easily than having somebody, you know, who's leading it, some sort of authority figure, which I hate, but you know, it happens there. So they will talk and open up and all sorts of things will come from that. that was one of the things we were talking about, actually, that, why do we revere authority figures? They've just, just because they've got an alphabet soup after their name or years more experience or something like that. I didn't actually say it yesterday, but I will be in the, maybe in the next introductory webinar, which will be in about immortal time. But one of the best levelers I've found, and lots of people say this, and I haven't got a picture to show it at the moment, but you'll find one on Google, is, when we're all sat on the toilet with our pants around our ankles and you get a sort of knees down view, we are completely level. You imagine, I don't know, the Queen sat on the loo with her pants around her ankles. She's not going to look that different from me sat on the loo with pants around my ankles. And she has to do all the same bodily functions that I do. She has to wash, she has to clean herself, she has to dress and all this sort of thing. She doesn't have to make her own bed, like most of us do. But when you actually bring her down to basic physics, physicals, we're not that different, For a real horror show, I mean, imagine Boris on the loo with his pants around his ankles. Well, let's not. No, that was too bad. No, sorry, too much. We will stop. But that's the sort of thing I mean. And we were heading in that direction and walking around it yesterday. But an introductory webinar and yesterday, it didn't feel like quite the way to go. So we didn't. But something that came out of this little time in the breakout rooms was something that I hadn't actually set up, but it came anyway. And people were sort of saying, we looked at us and we were all women in the group, in the webinar. All of us were women. There were no very young women, and there was me, who's quite old, but most of the others were middle-aged women. And I sort of looked middle-aged-ish anyway on a webinar. So they said, well, it's really odd because we're all middle-aged, white women here. There's no young people. There's no men. There's no people who are not white of other cultures. I mean, there were people from around the world. I mean, I got Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, as well as the UK. So there were different cultures happening because although we might be white and women, we lived in different places, we lived differently, and we lived in different communities. So there was that. But what sort of struck me particularly is, what was the need that there should be men there, that there should be different people of different races there? It's the should that's doing me. Now, over the past 30 years, we've been brought up to think that government should have people of all cultures and races that live in that country in them. And people should have, lots of women. There should be a proper proportion of women in there. I mean, I don't know what a proper proportion of women is. I'm not sure anybody else does either. I mean, is it 50%? Is it 70%? Is it 30%? And why are we valuing or judging people for their gender or their ethnicity or their age? I don't know. But I do know that we've all been encouraged. Oh, well, there's no black people in the government. There's very few women in the government. There's very few, whatever your thing is, in whatever organization it is. Now, there are historical things which are staggering along towards change, like, the glass ceiling for women. Women can only go up so far, and then to get up to the next level of hierarchy, we'll get back to that one in a minute, of hierarchy, is going to be really hard for them because they're women. Well, it has been, and in many ways it still is, and I don't like that. But I think we have to be careful when we're working with other world, when we're working in the old ways, about how we introduce or feel we should have things that are part of the modern culture. Whether we should need to have a spread of ethnicity, a spread of age, a spread of gender. I'm doing the webinars and I'm trying to be useful to help people enable themselves to rewild their hearts. Not about culture, ethnicity, age, gender, or any of those things, but because I don't care if you're a purple spotted giraffe. If you've got rewilding, if you've got wild, if you're wanting to get wild and at heart, if you're wanting to work with others, and they don't have to be more purple spotted giraffes, if you're wanting to work with others, then that surely is the thing. Now, added another one. How am I supposed to ensure that we have a variety of age, a variety of gender, a variety of ethnicity, a variety of culture? How am I supposed to do that? I can't sort of go around the countryside, the whole of the UK, saying, oh, I want you because you're black. I want you because you're Indian. I want you because you're a woman. I want you because you're young. I want you because you're a man. I can't do that. That's shit. And it's just as bad as anything else to do with ageism or genderism or ethnicityism or whatever else there is. To go around picking people because they are something is as bad as to exclude them because they're something. For me, that's another thing that was brought up to me yesterday beautifully. And I'm excited about it because I've got to add that in to what I'm going to put into the future webinars and to the retreats that we're going to have to help people get over that one, to help people climb out of that box that, oh, you must have. What you need for rewilding, what you need for helping people be wild at heart, wild of heart, is the willingness of the person, whatever the hell they are, wherever the hell they are, however old they are, I don't care. But their heart has to be willing. You can't teach anybody anything unless they want to learn it. You can get people to pass SATs because that's sort of rote learning stuff. This is how you do it. So, practice doing it like that. So do it like that on the day and you'll pass. What use is that? It's not thinking. That's statistics. Statistics that is going to keep the school board happy, keep the local council happy, keep the government happy. Are we rewilding our own hearts to keep anything like that happy? Really? I'm not. I don't actually give a toss about those kind of organisations and things. What I care about is the people who want to rewild their heart, and not everyone does. So the only people who will come to me are the people who want to help themselves rewild their hearts. And there's no way I can lasso in a proper spread of people that, gets government happy or people happy or whatever. I can't. And I'm certainly not going to try. I've been told in the past, not recently, a long time ago, but, well, if you did your course like this, then these sort of people would want to come. And I'm sort of looking at them going, I'm doing this course, me. They're getting the knowing that I've got, the knowledge that I've got, any wisdom if there's any around, and they're getting me. They're not getting a standardized, robotized course. They're getting me. And I hope, and I think I'm not too bad at it actually after all these years, I hope that getting a dose of me helps them become them. Not clone of me, but them. Themselves, their true selves, their authentic selves, their honest selves. Because rewilding your heart is all about that. So this was glorious to come out of this discussion. We didn't actually discuss it yesterday because there were too many other things that people wanted to discuss and to work with. But I sort of, when I got right out of the workshop and I'd sort of gone and had a cup of tea, sat by, it's my favourite place now. I always sit by the pond, unless it's raining. And when I got that, I thought, ooh, that's what I need to do. I need to bring that in. Not give them, an answer, but say, what's going on? What is it that's making you feel this? Because that's happening throughout our lives. And sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes it's not a good thing. So are we learning to discern when it's actually useful and when it isn't? And then another thing came up. Now, as you know, I work with the old ways that I was brought up with by my parents and the old people in the village. I don't mean old age, but the people of the old ways in the village. And I learned from them. Now, one of the things that came up out of this was that there were no men. Now, in the old days, back in the 50s, there were more men involved, but there were still far more women. So I thought back again. I love fairy stories and old stories. And you start thinking through them. So often, the wise person is not a man, it's a woman. Many of the major figures in our old ways are feminine, not masculine. We do have both. We have both far more than most things. And you sort of say, is it a god or goddess of the Cauldron? I sort of go both. Off the top of my head. The goddess is Ceridwen. There are others, but bang Ceridwen today. And the god is Gwynap Nuth. And both have cauldrons. And they both work together because there's this twisting together, twining of threads, as we call it. And one brings in the goddess aspect and the other brings in the god aspect, and the two work together. Now, yes, it would be very nice, perhaps, would it? I don't know. Or is this, a box that I'm in that I didn't even realize I was in? Would it be very nice to have, 50 men and 50 women? Would that even be helpful? Would it work? Is that what the two genders actually do? How do they do it? Do they work together like that? Or do they work together quite differently? As you may know, I'm also a psychotherapist, done a whole big psychology training. And just about all psychology trainings do talk about masculine and feminine. doesn't necessarily mean to say they talk about men and women. They can do, and it may come to that, but it's much more about the essence of being masculine and the essence of being feminine. And it brings me to the I Ching, which I did from being quite a child, because I love the patterns. And in the I Ching, they start from this two-way difference, these two apparently polar, masculine and feminine, actually feminine and masculine, I think. And they portray them as the feminine is 3 lines, ding, 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 with a gap in the middle. And the masculine is 3 unbroken lines. So it's 3 broken lines is the feminine, and 3 unbroken lines is the masculine. It's quite striking, that, because it is a massive difference. They talk about for the broken lines, that the broken lines is like the receptacle, it's like the cauldron. And unbroken lines are like the spear. When I learned this later, when I was actually doing the psychology and I learned much more about it, I thought, wow, that's what we say. The feminine cauldron, the container, and the masculine spear that goes out. And I started looking around, and everywhere I went into old traditions and old stories and that kind of thing, I discovered there is this idea of the container, and there's this idea of the arrow, spear, sword, whatever, that goes out. And in the psychology and from the old stories, the feminine contains, and the masculine goes out and explores. Now, often the container is the one who's holding everything. Not necessarily as is. I mean, cauldrons have things in them and fires underneath them, and everything bubbles and bubbles and bubbles, and then 3 drops of wisdom jump out on your thumb, and you go, and and you get wise a bit. Excuse me, no, I have not got COVID, so I was going to say COVID. But I have got a tickly nose. And the spear that goes out and finds new things, maybe to bring them back. The big one that we have that is fundamental in our old ways in this country is what I call the earth, what I was up to call the earth sun. And it's a meditation where you first go down into the cauldron, the heart of the earth, and you connect with her, and it is definitely her in our ways. And then you go up through yourself again and out to the sun. And the sun, you go into the heart of the sun again, all boil, 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 madness. And you connect and you come back down, and you just do this connection between the two of them. So there again, you have the earth who's containing, and the sun who is sparking, in our terms, sparking. And it is very like the womb and the penis, that the womb contains the seed and will eventually grow it if it's fertilized. And the sun, the penis, is the one that inspires it, inseminates it, sparks off the ideas, sparks off the life. But that life has to grow, and it doesn't grow in the sun, and it doesn't grow in blokes. Yes, I'm sure there are blokes who actually have sort of functioning wombs. All sorts of strange things happen, but it's not the basic intention of Mother Earth. Mother Earth has the female side as the container for the birth of the new thing. Happens in seeds, plants, fish, animals, birds. There is a container. It's the female bird who lays the egg, which is another form of the cauldron. And it's the male who sparks the idea. Now, it's nice to think that the idea is sparked. We're all full of love and light and that sort of thing, but often it isn't, is it? When you get an idea, it's because you get cross. Because you get, stop this is not working, that's not right. So the idea can be actually quite a prod, quite a poke. Right, okay, so there we are. And we've got our webinar, and there's 50 women and 50 poking men. Is anything good going to come out of that? Are there too many men? It's often said that people in the female body, in the female gender, are better at working together than people in the male gender. And in many ways it is. Women tend to come together and muddle it through and get it right. Men, certainly over the past few thousand years, tend to come together and need a bloke to organise them so that they all march in step. In that sense, I'm not saying all men, but maybe there is something in the masculine gender that needs to be autocratic and hierarchical. Maybe there is. Maybe that's only been there over the past few thousand years, say 10, since farming. Before then, it's very different. We'll go into that probably another time. So the women are there bringing it together. And they work quite intuitively. I mean, other women out there, how often have you said to your friend, oh, get me the thingy out of the what's it, will you? And she comes along with precisely the right spoon. Have you tried saying, oh, get me the thingy out of the what's it, will you, to a bloke? What's the thingy? Where's the what's it? Where? What? A lot of you will probably respond to that. I certainly have a problem with mine. But do you see that men and women are different? Those in the masculine gender, whatever their physical form, and those in the feminine gender, again, whatever their physical form, they're not the same. They're not the same thing with the dangly bits at the top or the bottom. They're really not. There's a lot more goes on in there. There's a lot more strands of complexity and difference in there. And one isn't better than the other. They're just different. And like Ceridwen with her cauldron and Gwynapnos with his cauldron, both are necessary. But in the right place, in the right time. Yesterday, seemingly, was a day for women. Fine. I'm perfectly happy to work with men. I have worked with men. I didn't work with men yesterday. But I'm very happy with them. They're fine. There's nothing basically wrong with them. There's a few that I cheerfully kick, but as an overall thing, they're absolutely fine. But I can't work precisely the same way with them as I do with those in the feminine gender, with women. I have to change because I can see by their expressions and their body language and their energy that's coming off that they're not seeing things in the same way that the women do. Because I'm currently in the feminine gender, I probably will say things easier, probably, but I have had times when I don't, probably will say things easier to women. And I have to do a bit of a oomph, and then I can go for it with men. I have got lots of practice, and I'm perfectly happy with them being different, and I'm perfectly happy that the man can't necessarily see it from the same terms as the woman will. So I think we possibly need to actually move that box about we need, the proper proportion of women, the proper proportion of ethnicity, the proper proportion of age, or whatever it is. I know why some of this has come about, and if you think about it, I'm sure you do too. And it's about things like that glass ceiling. Women didn't get the vote until 1920, was it? Was it 15? Anyway, somewhere way back then. Men had had the vote ages before that. Not all men, true. All men didn't get the vote until the 1880s, something like that. But men have always been given a choice since we started to get men in charge. And that's certainly since the Norman Conquest, and very much so also since the Romans. Before that, it was still quite fluid. Even after the Romans in this country, it was quite fluid. There are several very important, useful, interesting, and powerful women, including a queen, a Saxon queen, just up the road from me here. They were judges, they owned land, they ruled land, they led armies, all this kind of thing. One of our famous heroines is Boudica. And that was sort of on the edge of the Romans, towards the end of the Roman period. But her husband died and said, "Go for it, girl. You've got it now." And there was no fuss over that. She was only unusual in the Romans' eyes. And because we take so much of our history from these wonderful Romans who wrote everything down, with their own agenda, of course, we believe that Boudica was unusual, but she wasn't at all. So there's this box, and in the 60s, I was definitely in the 60s. I was a hippie. It was fine. In the 60s, we got to burning our bras. I didn't actually wear a bra at the time because I didn't need one. Very thin, slim. And anyway, we burned our bras and we maybe became feminists and we believed in feminine power and this sort of thing. And that idea that we need proper representation of women, proper representation of age, because the next thing that came along was, "You're too old for this, you're rubbish, you're on the skippy." Age. And of course there've been race, even in the Second World War, where they did absolutely brilliantly to save us, there was a hell of a lot of nastiness then against the Polish air pilots. And they were fucking fantastic. Absolutely amazing. They weren't like us. And so, they weren't like some of our guys. Not that I'm knocking our guys, because our guys were brilliant too. But they didn't work the same. And so the mentals didn't happen. Neither side could easily adjust to the other side. Well, why doesn't he let him do that? Why doesn't he think like that? Why does he think like that? So after the war, things started to change. We actually got a Labour government. We actually got the national health. We actually got free education. It was free. Yeah, it was free when I was going to school. University of the North. And then we let men in. Sorry, I'm going to be pissed in there. Stop that, Annie. Right, stop. We must stop that. So the idea that we needed to be sure that people could be represented, could have opportunity, was very important. And in order to prove it to ourselves, we had to have them there showing that they had opportunity. I suspect some of them probably didn't awfully want to be there. They wanted to do something else. But there you go. So we've got women and we've got men. And the same thing happens with old people, young people, middle-aged people. this ethnicity, that ethnicity, etc., etc. And we think we need more of them in order to prove that we're doing it right. That's a whole huge box to be in, that you need to have statistics to prove that you're doing something right. Think of your kids with SATs. They're doing this shit to perform and make statistics work properly to make somebody else happy. Not them. Poor little buggers don't want to do it. Anyway, they should not be doing exams at the ages that they are now doing exams. They don't want that kind of stress. They don't want that kind of teasing. They've got lots of things they should be doing, in their baby years, certainly up to about 9, 10, maybe even longer, that are about exploring. The word education comes from the Latin educare, and educare means to lead out, to explore. So we're back on that. Sharp it again. You sort of climb out of the womb and you go and explore. And you do that whether you're dangly bits at the top or at the bottom. You're going to do it in your own way. It won't necessarily be the same way, but you will. So maybe that's something just to pull into your own heart and think, what do I actually mean by this? Am I living someone else's script on this? Do I believe in it? Does it work? Would it be better if there were sort of 10 of this race and 10 of that race and 10 of this culture and 10 of that culture, and etc. with equal numbers? Equal numbers mean equal opportunity? Do they? Really? Think about it. And it takes me down to a very basic one for me. And this is probably because I was brought up in the family I was brought up in and in the old ways. And I'm sure there are other females out there, lots of them, who call themselves a woman. I never call myself a woman. I don't call myself a man either. If I have to, if it gets into the conversation, I try and sort of weave around it. If I'm stuck against it, then they get my answer. And my answer is, I'm a human being who is currently wearing the female gender. I've got memories of being a human being wearing the male gender. Quite a lot of us who work in any form of the old ways, any form of witchery or shamanism or whatever you want to call it, we remember being the other gender. Now, those memories are there, and I'm able to pull them up. Not all of them, but, those that are relevant. And those of us who are in this kind of work, we're all able to pull them up. Probably most of the people in the government, probably all of the people currently in the government, just about, they don't have any of that training. They can't remember being anything than whatever they are now, male or female. But we old ones can. You could if you want to. My students can't necessarily at first, and then they say, oh, I remember doing that. Oh, that's what it feels like. No, you take your mind off that. I saw it disappear down that rat hole. No, apart from remembering what sex was like, or remembering what peeing was like in whatever gender you are not at the moment, it's much more than that. It's about being you. Now, you is not a gender. That's a big thing. Actually, you is not an ethnicity either, because I've got memories of being very different ethnic than white, middle class, middle-aged, as I am now. Lots of them. No, I'm not going to give you a load of examples just for fun, but I have, and many of us do have. And no, we weren't all sort of Boudica or Cleopatra or anything shit like that. And one of my best ones, and one which in a lifetime which I shared with my current husband, is I was a Roman squaddy in Julius Caesar's army, and I was actually in the Battle of Vercingetorix, and I managed to come home with only a couple of war wounds. And Paul, my husband, was a Jewess who you call it wed or married or anything like that. But anyway, we were together and we had about 6 or 8 kids. And yes, I would come home from the war full of the joys of spring, and I would, definitely. I've got memories of that. He's got memories of that, and we've shared them. It's quite one of the funny ones. So, am I a woman? When I'm remembering being a squaddy in Julius Caesar's army? Is he a man when he's remembering being a rather pretty Jewess who really enjoyed a quick roll on the bed, hay, whatever we got on the floor with me when I came home? What I'm wearing now, what I look like now, is not necessarily, well, it certainly isn't everything that I am, because I have memories. And as I said, we can all have memories. I've helped lots of people remember things like that. And no, they weren't anybody posh or poncy. They were just people. So we're people, we're human beings, and we're wearing a particular gender, like a spacesuit for getting around on planet Earth. But it's still the same spirit, a bit younger, who was the squaddy in Julius Caesar's army, as the spirit that is now in me, who is this sort of lunatic rewilder, talking to you on Zoom 2,000 years later. But it's my spirit. And my spirit doesn't be a gender. Neither actually does yours. And it's one hell of a box to get out of, because it tends to wreck all the shibboleths and other stuff that we live with all our lives. And that's all somebody else's script. It's not us being truly and authentically us. So there I am. Fantastic introductory webinar yesterday. Fantastic stuff come out of it that I hadn't expected at all. Thank God I went in without any expectations, and loads and tons and bucketfuls of expectancy that have brought whole new things up for me, or new ways of looking at things. Not that I haven't looked at gender before, I have, but this has brought in, look at it that way, look at it that way. New points of view. And we need lots of points of view if we're going to find this gold at the centre that we're all trying to aim for. I'm going to do the introductory webinar, as I said, around about Imulks. That's around about, say, the 1st of January, 1st of February time. Thereabouts. I don't know yet, I haven't planned it, but it will be the same webinar that we did yesterday. So if you've been on that one, unless you really want to, leave space for somebody else to come in February. People have written up some of the things that they thought about and felt about when they were there on the post where I'm talking about Rewilding Your Heart webinar. So you can go on my page and read them, and it gives you more of an idea, a better idea than I can, because they were there doing it. And I'm the one who sort of sorted it and planned it and put it on. And while that's really worthwhile, it's also really worthwhile hearing about what the people who were there thought. I'll try and collect it all together and put it in one space for you and say, yeah, this is it. So I'm going to do that next spring, when actually, Bridie comes out. Cauldron and Bridie meet and they work together to go into the new way. Not quite as Cauldron works with Olwen at Spring, but it's that sort of idea of handing on, next step. So I'm going to do it at that next step time. And then after that, I've got planning, and it's still mulling around in the head cauldron and in the heart, and actually in the heart cauldron, but also in the gut cauldron, where I'm feeling whether it's right with my guts. 3 sort of masterclass webinars to give you ideas and tools to actually work with to rewild your own heart. And for those of you who want to, hopefully some of the people who were there yesterday and some people who are going to be there at IMOC, and people who've done the masterclass or done one of the masterclass webinars. For all people who want to, then let's just leave it at that. I'm going to do 3 retreats here at my home, which is in Stratton Hills, Shropshire, which is gorgeous. So I live here. And it'll be a full board retreat, and we'll be working from Friday night to Sunday afternoon on exercises and practices and going out and doing them and then coming back and sharing what happened for each of us and discussing it and taking it. But we're actually going to be physically together, which would be really nice because I haven't done that for a couple of years. So we're going to do that. There'll be one at spring, one at summer, and one at autumn. So keep an eye on my site, which, as you know, is ellensentier.com. And on the Facebook pages, because you'll find the stuff will go up there too. And in all of this, I'm going to be taking in this idea of gender, age, ethnicity. How does it work? How does it help us? How can some of our ideas about it actually hinder us? And we're going to be playing with those in the masterclasses, and on the retreats. I seem to be about to cough my heart out, so excuse me. No, I haven't got COVID, honestly. But I do think, on that terrible note, I shall leave you all. And I'll see you all again next week. So take care, everybody. See you next week. Bye.